Hi, it's Luna. Welcome to day 15 of Moth Eaten Reel's 31 Days of Horror 2024. Today's background noise brought to you by squirrels, someone sawing a tree way off in the background, and maybe the odd passing car, because we're outside, in a foreign land, much like the protagonist of today's film. A Serbian film that gets to Eastern Europe's vampire roots in a way that is not entirely expected. I'm gonna be talking about Vampir from 2021. Let's talk about it. You'll have to forgive me my snuffliness. I'm a little bit cold because I'm outside, and also I'm a little bit of a mess because that's been an ongoing thing since like 2007, frankly. Anyway, our protagonist is driving up to this village, and I was blindsided because I thought, looking at all the Serbian names and all of the information that I knew, that we would be relying on subtitles to be watching this film, but no, they got me. Much like The Watcher from the other day, this is actually a film that is mostly in English, and all of the Serbian is not subtitled, so that we end up in that same atmosphere as the protagonist of, oh no, it's creepy because I don't know what you're saying. Are you talking about me? I don't know. The immediate comes in when his taxi driver's like, yeah, I'm not going any further. I'm like, I love that it's one of those scenes where you don't need to understand the language to then get the charades playing out of the taxi driver basically saying, I'm not going any further than this. You cannot get me to drive this car any further that way. So he gives him his money and he gets out, and then we meet Vesna, his I thought she was maybe like a landlady at first, but no, we have a bit of conversation with them, and it's because she's the one who's kind of supplying the building for him. He's not renting it out, so to speak, but he's taken a job as a little graveyard keeper in this area, because she explains to him that there needs to be a graveyard keeper in this small, tiny, remote Serbian village, because there's been a lot of grave robbing and actual digging up of the bodies lately, she says. The film refers to the group that's doing this as gypsies, to hide their identity as vampires. You know, the film is called Vampir. We're going into this knowing that it's vampires. But she's obviously hiding that from the protagonist, because one thing about this film is that the director was quite dedicated to making it very in line with Serbian folktales, and in a lot of the Serbian folklore vampire tales, these people would have been groups from the Romani or Sinti tribes across lots of Europe, so people's fear of these outside groups would have then made up a lot of the fear and basis of the vampire folktale from around these areas. And you know, I often go into these things not actually wanting to know too much about the film, but I think that it was kind of nice it being an art house style film, so you know, ambiguous ending, dreamlike atmospheres, challenging. I think it was good going in and knowing that it's paranoid by squirrels. I think it was good to go in knowing the director's vision, because interestingly as well, the director is the writer, is the actor who plays the lead. He had a vision, and I like the way that then the art house form kind of lends itself to a really good folklore atmosphere. I think it's another one of these plots that you could say is quite straight-laced. I haven't even done my little summary yet. Let me do my little summary, 2 minutes too late. So I wrote it down as: a reserved English-speaking man is dropped off at a remote Serbian village where he seems to have taken a job as a graveyard keeper from the alluring but stone-cold Vesna. Unable to communicate with any villagers beside Vesna and the village priest, he is further isolated by terrifying and gruesome night visions and increasing paranoia around the villagers. So that's the sum up, and that kind of is it, because a lot of the film, as I say, is then just dreamy and ambiguous, very atmospheric. I think, well, again, it's art house. I think that if you go into it expecting big jumps and big narrative and big dialogue, then yeah, well, don't do that. And if slow burn multiple watches doesn't sound appealing to you, then the film probably won't be. I really liked it because I like the kind of mystery and vibes based filming, and the direction of this, I think it was really incredible actually. The funny thing is, as kind of obscure as a lot of things were, I think that it was probably one of the most unsettling movies that we've watched so far in 31 Days of Horror 2024. There are moments of the direction that really do feel very uncanny, and I like that when he's moving through the house, it does that thing that people went gaga over with Mike Flanagan's Haunting of Hill House and Haunting of Bly Manor, which is the camera kind of follows in not a super stable way. Not shaky cam, but not a super stable way. There'll be a word for that, but I don't know it. This isn't film studies, get out of here. But what I'm saying is he moves through the house, and we kind of move with him, and then it's enough that he's in focus, and in the background, unfocused, is a figure standing there, and it's very unsettling, because you're like, oh, you didn't see that. I love it. I think it's real good. And another one is when we inevitably reach that point where he wakes up as a vampire. There is something really just like wrong about the movements that I'm like, it's great, it's amazing, because it's one of those shots that it's like, it's still, but the way he gets up, so maybe it's like a combination of the acting and the filming, it's really, yeah, disturbing and uncomfortable, the way he sits up with his darkened eyes. I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, that sent a little shiver down my spine, oh my goodness. Sorry, now that I'm in the graveyard, all I'm doing is looking out for dog walkers all nervous, like, I'll put the camera away. Back to the folklore. I think that it's a real masterstroke to leave it as ambiguous as it is, but also incorporating those kind of freaky elements to it. I'm sorry, I feel mean calling it freaky, but you know what? I also feel like I get a bit of a pass because I'm in southwest England where we've still got things like Morris dancers. So I am also in on that freaky folklore, to call it freaky. I really liked one of the first scenes when he finds that the provisions that Vesna promised in the house are not really there. She said there's plenty. There is nothing in the fridge, nothing in the cupboards. And so he goes to a nearby pub, cafe, where there happens to be some folklore dancers on at the time, and they're doing some little jam out to the sound of, I don't know what the instrument is, but it's great. It creates a really kind of unsettling, frantic tune. It sounds like bees in a drain pipe. But it was energetic and jaunty, you know, so maybe in this simile, the bees in a drain pipe are riding clown cars or something. And it goes on for a while in that way that, like I said, really works for how unsettling it is. And it's all to do with this instrument that I have no idea what it is, I suppose. But the dancers and then the atmosphere as everyone in this small village is obviously looking at him. He asks for a beer in this pub cafe place, whilst all the locals with powdery white faces and very red looking eyes and lips as a result of that are kind of staring at him and snickering at him. And he doesn't get a beer, he doesn't get food either, because when he asks for that, the staff is like, no food, no food. And then they come out and they give him red wine like everybody else. So, terrible service. If he got any signal, I bet that he would rate it very low on TripAdvisor. And I do then want to take this moment to really praise the makeup. Okay, so this is then also a very low budget film, but I then, as part of this, don't want to actually say, like, something delusional like all the best films are low budget, because nah, you know what, a bunch of shoestring budget movies are great despite the budget, not because of it. However, I do like how it leads to then the creativity in certain decisions, and how sometimes things then not being so glossy as part of a high budget really contributes to it. Looking at all of these faces, I was thinking about how many flippin' makeup TikToks I've seen or Instagram reels that are like, this is cakey, horrible makeup. Don't make it look cakey. And I'm like, no, it looks so good for this though, because of just that powdery white that really makes the natural reds of like our eyes and our lips stand out. I think it really worked for this, as well as the fact that everyone is wearing quite robish black clothes, but also in a casual way. I really liked it. It just created a really good vibe. And it's then fun to know that it was clearly such a budget thing. One of then the most horrifying night terror scenes. I think it's the second to last one that he gets. It starts to get very ambiguous towards the end. But oh my god. So the main tormentors that he experiences during these night terrors are the old ladies around the village. So for a hot minute, watching this for the first time, I thought, oh, maybe are we getting tricked? Is this not so much a vampire movie, but it's going to be like some kind of witch movie? Bit of both. But they freaking... He wakes up, they shove a sock in his mouth so he can't scream, and then they're just swiveling his guts out on this barbed stick like spaghetti. It was a lot. And it lasted for a solid 2 minutes. We were allowed to linger on that. And I think that another thing about this movie I really liked direction-wise for all these scenes is it uses darkness really well. And there is a lot of movies where they just rely on darkness so much. And I watch things in the cinema all the time, so I don't even know what they're doing. I don't know what screens they're expecting you to look at these things on, where you cannot see a single thing, and it does not help. It just makes you frustrated and angry. Well, it does to me anyway. But I think that this film is really good at how it uses light and darkness. There's some scenes as well talking about the light. Butterflies. That's really exciting, actually. I found that actually a lot of this movie then plays out in the daytime if you kind of ratio it up. And I really like that. I think that sometimes the day can be really underrated as like a horror scene. I think when it's done well, it's done really well. And this movie brings in all the things I like about a well done day horror scene, where it's always less of then blagar and more that creeping dread that comes because the daytime has its own horror, because the night, you're waiting for the day. You're waiting for the salvation of the light and the people around you who are obviously going to help you. The night is meant to be like isolating. Everyone's asleep. You're all alone. You can't see everything. It's scary because of that aspect. But the daytime, when everything's revealed, that's then scary when you're clearly plunged into a situation where, yeah, sure, now you're around people, now you can see everything, and it is as horrifying as you thought, but nobody cares. And of course that works brilliantly for this film, where it gets straight in there with the isolation. Another big aspect of that, of course, is the fact that he can't speak Serbian and he's surrounded by Serbians. One thing I liked as a joke was, of course we watched this with subtitles just for the everything, as we always do. And so every time it popped up when the villagers were speaking, it would pop up with "speaks foreign." Subtitlers, I'm gonna kick you in the shins. Why don't you just say "speak Serbian"? Also, I think you'll find that this Englishman in Serbia is the one speaking foreign. But another place where I really liked this light aspect, so a big scene that I enjoyed for tension and also the mindfuck aspect. One of the things to note here is that after one of the night terrors, he is then buried in a field. And I think it takes us a while to learn that he's actually from London, and he just like has old family that are from Serbia. The actor, director, writer himself is German Serbian, but it takes until he's buried in a field for him to go, I've had enough, no more of this. when food was rotting before and various other creepy things were happening. He couldn't get a beer, but I'm like, well, heck, isn't that just very British to be like, well, I'll just have to get on with it though. He just walks. He's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna pack my bags and just walk out of here. And oh, it's my favorite creepy concept, which is that you can keep trying to walk away, but it doesn't, you just keep coming back to the same place. Somehow, inexplicably, you'll always end up coming back there. No matter if he goes on the road in a straight line, no matter if he goes through the woods to circle round, he always ends up back at the village. And this time loop thing comes back again when he has this chat with the priest that he meets, because he comes round after reminding him, I said I was going to bless your house. Midway through the conversation, he hears a knock at the door and is like, oh, I wasn't expecting anyone. Gets up, open the door, there's the priest. But he was just talking to the priest. Then they have a different conversation. It's very, as I said, good mind fuck. I liked it. I think they did great with the atmosphere. Unfortunately, this priest, he's very pretty, and he was too pretty to live in this movie. And so when it's all explained, these pictures he's been finding with the scratched out eyes and this big book, yeah, the priest says something like, it's too late for you, and is subtly burning one of his metal crosses so he can then turn around and then imprint it on Arnaut's head. Arnaut during this kills him, and when he gets up, the crossburn is gone. But also the light streaming through the closed blinds, they just have this really great bleaching effect. I think that's what it is that I really like about the light in this movie, is that it's draining in its own way. We have all these associations with light and warmth and happiness and comfort and good times, but sometimes, and as I say, this movie brings this out in the way that it uses daytime scenes for horror, light is too much. It's overwhelming, overstimulating, blinding, bleaching, draining. And this movie uses that so well. One thing I like bringing up that it's draining as an effect as well is a thing that also popped up in another recent vampire movie that we watched for 31 Days of Horror. That was Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, and it was the presence of vampires just kind of draining things around them, rotting things around them. So after he finds that there's no bloody food in the house, Arnaut actually goes to the local corner shop. Probably wouldn't even call it a local corner shop in this remote village, but that's my habit. And he buys some bread, some eggs, and I think some meat. Comes back, and then they're all rotten. The bread is moldy, it's got these thick colonies of green all over it, and the meat has maggots, and the eggs, oh, you know what? I love eggs. Eggs are grand, but also they're so gross. So as soon as they pop up in horror, it's good, it's gross. These are especially gross, because what happened to the eggs, you ask? Well, he cracks them in the frying pan and there's blood in them. The ending is definitely an ambiguous one to me as well, because even though you could read it quite straight-laced, that Rasputin, it's not actually Rasputin, but this bearded guy kind of then breaks into his house at the end after this really kind of just, again, it's not terrifying, but it is super unsettling and skin-crawlingly uncomfortable, and they bring back that bees in a drain pipe instrument as then all of the villagers are just stalking him. They seem to almost just be teleporting to wherever he is. So he finally then gets shut back in his house and gets vamped by this guy with a big beard who I don't think we saw in any of the rest of the movie. I'm not sure. And there's a bunch of scenes before that we kind of see him react to something and we don't get to see the thing he's reacting to. And as he's being turned into a vampire, this starts filling in those gaps visually for us. But also it doesn't. It stays ambiguous and creepy and weird and alarming. But I do appreciate as well that maybe also with just our common narratives around vampires, that this one might then not kind of hit the right notes for someone who wants to go into a vampire movie. But I really vibed with it. It's, again, you know, another one that I'm like, yeah, make a music video out of that, because oof, the direction for these, oh my goodness, delicious. And also just very gory and gruesome and twisted, and yeah, left me feeling very unsettled. There were just such great scenes that really hit those beats of disgust and nervousness. Spent this whole video looking around me like, That's mostly because of the crows and squirrels and fear of dog walkers. But my point still stands. So I think for me, I am going to be giving Vampir 4 slices of moldy bread out of 5. Hope you'll join me for more eternal love, blood, and seduction for day 16 of 31 Days of Horror. I will see you soon. Goodbye. Come say goodbye to the crows.